Peter hit the snooze button twice. He loved Emily, he really did. But her insistence on living within walking distance of her mother, that was a whole other story. He knew deep down it was the right thing to do. Agnes, Emily's mum, was a firecracker, but she was getting up there. He finally dragged himself out of bed. The aroma of coffee wafted from downstairs. It was Agnes, always up before the sun. He could hear her puttering around in the kitchen, a symphony of clanging pots and pans. A small smile crept onto his face. He might grumble, but secretly he loved the sound of Agnes in the morning. It meant someone else had coffee duty. He threw on a robe and shuffled downstairs. Peter braced himself for the usual morning banter. It was all in good fun, of course, mostly. Agnes stood at the counter, her back to him. The morning light streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on her figure. She was humming along to the radio, a sprightly tune from the 60s. The melody filled the kitchen, adding a cheerful ambience to the start of their day. She turned, holding a spatula like a conductor's baton, waving it with exaggerated flair as if orchestrating an invisible symphony. "Ah, Sleeping Beauty finally awakens," she boomed, her voice echoing with playful energy. "Good morning to you too, Agnes," Peter mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. His movements were slow, still shaking off the remnants of sleep. "You know," Agnes said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "I used to think you were the strong, silent type." She winked, her eyes twinkling with mischief, a playful glint that Peter had come to adore. "Turns out you're just slow to wake up," she teased, her tone light and teasing. Peter chuckled. He had walked right into that one, as he often did. It was a part of their morning dance. It was their usual routine, a comforting ritual that set the tone for the day ahead. Agnes would land a playful jab, and he would pretend to be annoyed, though his eyes always betrayed his amusement. He poured himself a cup, the rich aroma of the coffee filling the air. The caffeine hit his system like a jolt, waking him up fully. The morning paper lay on the table, neatly folded, a silent invitation to start the day. Agnes always read it before him, but she knew better than to mess with his crossword puzzle. It was another part of their unspoken agreement, a small but significant part of their morning ritual. They settled into a comfortable silence, the only sound the gentle clinking of their mugs. The cafe around them buzzed with the low hum of conversations and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine, but in their little corner it felt like time had slowed down. Peter stole a glance at Agnes over the rim of his cup. He always found these moments of quiet reflection with her to be the most telling. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, a few stray strands escaping to frame her face. It gave her a casual elegance that Peter found endearing. She wasn't what you'd call classically beautiful, but there was a warmth in her eyes that made her instantly likable. Those eyes had a way of making you feel seen, truly seen and understood. "You know," Agnes began, breaking the silence, "Emily told me you were up late working on that presentation." Her voice had a teasing lilt to it, but there was genuine concern underlying her words. "How do you know it was late?" Peter asked, raising an eyebrow. He was curious, but also amused by her uncanny ability to know his habits. He knew the answer, of course. Agnes had a sixth sense for knowing when he was burning the midnight oil. It was as if she had a direct line to his thoughts and routines. Agnes simply smiled, taking a sip of her coffee. Her eyes twinkled with a mix of mischief and affection. "Let's just say I've been known to make a late-night chamomile run or two." Peter laughed. He could picture her in her cozy kitchen, brewing tea in the dead of night, thinking of him. He couldn't help but admire her quick wit. It was one of the many things that drew him to her. Agnes had a way of turning even the most mundane moments into something memorable. Her humor was a gift, a way of making the ordinary extraordinary, and Peter cherished every quip and smile she shared with him. The early days of their relationship had been ... interesting. Peter had tried so hard to impress her, to show Agnes he was the right man for her daughter. He would shower her with compliments, bring her flowers, the whole 9 yards. But Agnes saw right through it. She preferred his genuine, albeit sometimes grumpy, self. Over time, the forced politeness had given way to something more authentic. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, teasing each other mercilessly, but always with a foundation of respect. Peter had come to realize that beneath Agnes's sharp wit was a heart of gold. He found himself looking forward to their morning exchanges. It was their own little ritual, a way to start the day with a smile, even if it was sometimes disguised as an eye roll. Section 5. The Green Thumb Initiative. One sunny Saturday morning, Peter found Agnes in the backyard. She was hunched over a patch of dirt, her brow furrowed in concentration. "What you working on?" he asked, joining her in the garden. "This, my dear boy," Agnes said, gesturing to the bare earth, "is going to be my magnum opus, a tomato garden to rival all tomato gardens." Peter had never seen her so animated. Gardening, he learned, was Agnes's passion. She spoke of her plants with the same affection she had for her grandchildren. He watched as she meticulously planted each seedling, her movements sure and steady. He had to admit, even though he couldn't tell a petunia from a potato, there was something calming about being surrounded by nature. Section 6. Tomatoes and Triumphs. "Here," Agnes said, handing him a trowel. "Even you can handle this." He took the tool, surprised to find himself eager to help. He spent the rest of the afternoon working alongside Agnes, learning the delicate art of nurturing life from the ground up. They chatted about everything and nothing, their laughter mingling with the buzzing of bees. As the weeks passed, their shared project flourished. The tomato plants grew tall and strong, their branches heavy with plump, juicy fruit. Peter found himself taking pride in their little garden, a testament to their unlikely partnership. He learned more about Agnes during those afternoons in the garden than he had in all the years he'd known her. He discovered a hidden artistic side, a love for classical music, and a surprising talent for whistling. Section 7. A shared language of banter. Their morning banter took on a new dimension. They traded gardening tips along with their usual barbs. Peter found himself bragging about the size of their tomatoes to his co-workers, much to their amusement. One morning over coffee, Agnes surprised him. "You know," she said, her eyes twinkling, "for someone who can't tell a weed from a rose bush, you've got a real knack for this gardening thing." Peter blushed, touched by her rare compliment. "Well," he said, puffing out his chest playfully, "I did learn from the best." Agnes chuckled. "Don't let it go to your head," she said, but there was a warmth in her eyes that belied her words. Section 8. Sunday brunch, Agnes's way. Sunday brunch at Agnes's was a cherished tradition, one that everyone looked forward to all week. Emily and Peter would walk over after church, their arms laden with pastries from the bakery down the street. The smell of fresh bread and sweet treats would fill the air, making their mouths water in anticipation. Agnes would have the table set with her best china, the good silverware polished to a shine. The table would be adorned with fresh flowers from her garden, adding a touch of elegance and colour. "Peter, darling," Agnes would say, her voice dripping with mock sweetness, "would you mind fetching the orange juice?" She always had a way of making even the simplest request sound like a royal decree. "You know how I detest getting out of my chair once I've settled in," she would say this with a twinkle in her eye, knowing full well that Peter would oblige. Peter would roll his eyes, but he couldn't help but grin. It was all part of the ritual, a dance they had perfected over the years. He knew Agnes was perfectly capable of getting her own juice, but he played along, their little dance of familiar comfort. It was these small moments that made their gathering so special. As they ate, Agnes would regale them with stories from her youth. Her eyes would light up as she recounted tales of adventure and mischief, each story more colourful than the last. She had a knack for storytelling, her tales sprinkled with just the right amount of exaggeration and humour. Her expressive gestures and animated voice would draw everyone in, making them feel like they were right there with her. Peter would listen, captivated, as Emily chimed in with her own memories. The room would be filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses, a symphony of joy and togetherness. Section 9. The Heart of the Home. Agnes might have been Emily's mother, but she'd become a friend, a confidant. He realized that Agnes wasn't just Emily's mother, she was the heart of their little family. He found himself seeking her out, not just for the witty banter, but for her wisdom, her warmth, and her uncanny ability to make him laugh, even on the toughest days. As the sun began to set on another day, Peter found himself reflecting on how much his life had changed since moving in next door to Agnes. He had gained not just a mother-in-law, but a friend, a gardening buddy, and a constant source of amusement. Section 10. Morning Banter, Everlasting Bond. The next morning, Peter woke to the familiar sound of Agnes in the kitchen. He could hear her humming along to the radio, a mischievous glint in her eye. He padded downstairs, anticipating their morning exchange. As he rounded the corner, he saw Agnes standing at the counter, a steaming mug in her hand. "Ah," she said, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Look who finally decided to join the land of the living." Peter smiled, his heart full. "Good morning, Agnes," he said, reaching for his coffee. The banter, he knew, would never get old. It was a testament to their bond, a reminder that family, like a good cup of coffee, was best enjoyed with a healthy dose of laughter and love.